Hey folks, you're here again with Eston with another Unspoiled review. Today we're doing A Snake's Life. It's written by Kenneth Arant, narrated by Travis Baldree. So this is a pretty fun, exciting book. The book itself got a 4.45, narrator got a 5, overall was a 4.68. The book does some things really well and some things it just does okay. And but in the end, I immediately picked up the next book and started listening to it, and that's what I'm on right now. And so I feel like it's worth a read. But let's get into the details. To start with, Uniqueness. So on the Uniqueness scale, I gave it a 5, which is pretty rare for me. This book combines two different things that I find to be interesting. One, it provides a new perspective on reincarnation, in the sense that when you die, you don't just come back as like a bird or, a human in your own world and you're just reliving the current world. It actually reincarnates on another planet. With a world that's governed by different rules than your own. And that's a lot more interesting. And in addition to that, the thing that's even more interesting than that is that it's your classic hero's journey, but it's from the perspective of a monster that's trying to become a hero. And so you have a lot of like excess biases that are, people, don't think that you're going to be a good guy. There's a lot to overcome there. The natural instincts of a monster to kill and destroy, those kind of things have to be overcome. And so you package all those things together and you put it into a lit RPG world, and I find it to be a pretty interesting series, so far at least. One note about the lit RPG element is that it is more of a tool than it is a integral part of the system. So it feels like it's more used to describe what's going on than it is to give information to the user about every nook and cranny of the world, and to provide super amounts of fine detail about what's going on. And so it's slightly different in that sense, and I think it would only loosely be classified as lit RPG, but I think it still would. So 5 out of 5 for Uniqueness. On to the character development side of things, I gave it a 4.8. And so the rationale for that, the main character does have great growth and development. There's a lot of wow moments where he becomes powerful or he does something and you feel very impressed, and you're amazed at the progress that was made. The only problem I found was that it felt like he was moving too fast, that things were going too well for the main character, and that he didn't have to struggle through at least time enough to be able to get to where he got to at the end of the book. And so I think there's 2 more books out, and so it's going to be really interesting to see where we go from here. He's not some ultra powerful being at this stage, but he did grow a lot faster than I expected. In addition to the power and strength that he gained, there was some minor growth on the mental perspective. He died an old man, so he already had a personality that was fairly set in stone, but he did have to come to grip with what it means to be a monster living with humans. And you see some of that in this book, but I think there's more of that to come. We'll see. Into one of the areas where the book was a little bit weaker, we have the secondary characters. And so there are secondary characters. They are just not ultra important. And so they fall into kind of 2 categories. You have category number 1. You have the secondary characters that are more human, and they help the main character tap into that humanity and remain human, even though he does some things that are very, on the monster side of the spectrum. And then you have people that help him with his progression. Those aren't necessarily mutually exclusive camps, but they always felt like they were helping out with the main character to get to his goals, and you didn't see as much of their hopes and dreams as much. You saw a little bit of it, but just not enough for me to feel like the secondary characters were fully dynamic. And I think we'll get more of that into the next couple of books, but in this book, the secondary characters were too convenient. And just not real enough for me to give it any more than a 4 out of 5. I mean, they're still good. They still help contribute to the story and are entertaining. They didn't take away from the story per se. I just don't think that they added a ton to it. And so, 4 out of 5 for secondary characters. And then on to the magic system. So the magic system I gave a 4 out of 5 as well. Primarily because we did not get to see a ton of magic happen in the book. It came primarily from secondary characters, and you don't get a whole lot of explanation for what's happening and what they're capable of, and that kind of stuff. By the end of the book, it does appear as though future books will get a little bit deeper look into the magic system, which I'm excited about. The reason I gave it a 4, like I thought about giving it less, but with lit RPGs, the system itself is a lot of times magical, and it is responsible for the main character knowing how and where to grow, and it does have some functional components that get exploited by the main character, and so that was kind of exciting, seeing the system exploited to help the main character grow even more powerful or to get around certain situations. And so all of those things are really cool. And so even though it's not like full-on magic like we like to think about it, it was enough for me to give the book a 4 out of 5. And so that's what we got for magic system. And then on to the narration side. So Travis Baldree is a fantastic narrator. We've seen him in all kinds of different things. He doesn't disappoint here. The main character doesn't have a huge range of expressions as a monster per se, but he very well does experience anger and frustration, and even a couple of instances of fear and excitement. And Travis Baldree really pulls that out, and he doesn't. One thing I really do like about Travis Baldree is that he doesn't go overboard. He expresses the character appropriate to the situation, such that it doesn't like take away from the realism. A book like this is not meant to just be a joke or humorous. It also has its serious moments, and having a narrator that doesn't take you out of the situation by being bombastic is really beneficial. And so I gave the dynamic voicing a 5 out of 5. I feel like he did a great job. There wasn't anything more I could have asked for here. And then in vocal cast, I also gave him a 5 out of 5. Every character felt like they had their own unique voice. They expressed themselves uniquely. It's actually kind of humorous. This is the second book that I have heard him narrate where he narrates an old guy. And he does a pretty fantastic job narrating old guys. Not to say that he's not fantastic at other roles as well, because all the other characters feel like, they have good real voices that are unique to them. But I think he really brings it home in this field. And just an extra note. But overall, he's a fantastic narrator. It does never seem to let us down. And so 5 out of 5 for all of his narrator categories. Into some of the useful pieces of information as far as age rating goes. Middle school and above, I'd recommend parental approval before diving in. There are some adult topics, like in the terms of like killing, and broadly discussed topics on sexuality. And so, depending on the middle schooler, they might not be mature enough to handle it. I think it's broad enough that they could. And so really up to the parents' discretion on that. I would say very definitely high schoolers and above could handle it, and probably middle schoolers. As I mentioned earlier, the book has some humorous moments, but also has some serious moments. It's a good mix. It's not just one. In the romance field, it is seen by some of the main characters have some some of the secondary characters have some romantic moments. The main character is mostly on the sidelines for this type of thing, and it's more of a chase romance. You get to hear about the one that, his wife before he died, and some things in that ballpark. But it's more of a chased romance feel for this book. Action, there's tons of action in this book. Gore, there is quite a bit. It's not excessive, but the author does go into detail when like combat scenes are happening, which helps add some realism to the situation. It's not enough that I feel like it's gonna be scarring or anything, but it is there. And the book was highly engaging. I immediately started picking up and listening to the next book, and I imagine that most people will. And so the only concern I have is that the main character might be growing too fast, but we won't really know until we get through, the next book or two. And so if the author plans on it being a short series, then, it might be at the right pace, but we'll just have to see. And so that's it. Like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you like and don't like. Different ratings if you would, have different scales that you think people should be graded on in these books. I'll leave links below to Audible, Patreon, even like a shake mix that I like to utilize for lunch and stuff like that. But yeah, just thanks for showing up. Thanks for listening, and have a good day. Bye.